Congratulations to everybody. I've heard so many wonderful things that have happened so far today. I've heard about the pitches. I've talked to some of the investors that have traveled here from a great distance, and I want to personally thank you, those of you who came to Albuquerque and to New Mexico, for seeing this as an opportunity, because I really see it that way, and we appreciate you being here. You have choices on how you can spend your time. You have choices on how you can spend your capital and how you can invest that capital. So my job tonight, and really it's not my job, it's what I love to do, is to tell you just a little bit about the great things that are happening in our city and why this is a great place for you to look to be investors. But before I do that, I would like to just get a round of applause for John Freisiger and all that. John's not only a great asset in our community, he's a good personal friend of mine, and he works certainly with TVC, does great things there, but he's always involved in something, involved with philanthropy in our community, or if something good's happening, John's trying to be in the middle of it. So John, appreciate your friendship, appreciate your leadership. Thank you very much. And to Russ Frew, thank you so much for traveling from Orlando to be with us this evening with Lockheed Martin. We appreciate you being here as well. All we got to do with John, though, is we're working on getting him out of his shell a little bit, and so we're going to pass the hat later, and we're going to get personality lessons for John. And so help us with that, please, if you can do that. We're a special place, and what mayor would not tell you that? I'm fortunate enough to be the head of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Metro Economies Committee. And in that role, I get a chance to meet with mayors around the country. I get a chance to meet with major flagship and research universities. I get a chance to meet with CEOs from some of the largest corporations in the world and talk about what mayors have to offer. And right now, mayors we're fortunate. We're kind of a popular bunch because we're the folks that are getting some things done, even when things aren't getting done sometimes in Washington and other areas. And I don't say that to brag on myself. I simply say that because I think that mayors have a real finger on the pulse of what's happening. And when we get together as mayors and we start talking about the national economy, we start talking about why it's important that innovation stays on the forefront, is because there are a couple of things that keep America on the forefront economically in the world and keep us on the forefront as a great beacon of freedom around the country. Number one is the fact that we are the great innovators. We are in a place in history where the great innovations are coming out of the United States. And these innovations are happening in garages and they're happening in the national laboratories. And we've been that way for many, many decades, if not centuries, since we were started as a nation. And we want to keep that going forward. So as we start talking about the national economy and we start talking about ways that we can promote this in our different cities, entrepreneurship is becoming a very popular thing to talk about. The good news in Albuquerque is we've been talking about this for a long time. I gave a speech the other day and I talked about if you could pick a dream team as a mayor, if you could say to an elected official, what would you like to have in your city in order to be able to get your economy going where you'd like it to go, not just today or next week or next year, but the next decade, the next 30 years, the next 40 years, go out 2 to 3 generations, and everybody would kill to have the assets that we have in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Of course, 2 national laboratories right here in our city between Sandia National Laboratories, and some folks sometimes don't remember AFRL, Air Force Research Laboratories, is right here in the city of Albuquerque. That's an AFRL, folks. Los Alamos Laboratories just up the road. We've got a great flagship university, the University of New Mexico. We've got one of the top-notch engineering schools in the world in Socorro, just down the street. We've got New Mexico State University. We've got this corridor of intellectual talent and capabilities here that I think are unmatched except for a few small runs on the East and West Coast. So I'm telling you some things that you may already know. But what I want to talk about is some of the things that we're doing in Albuquerque and that we've been doing for the last 4 years, and we're continuing to put us on the forefront of this entrepreneurial movement. And I see a real renaissance in this. And of course, the presenters today, I wasn't in the room for 30 seconds before I had people running up to me telling me how great the presentations were today. And this speaks volumes about New Mexico. I'm an entrepreneur, my wife's an entrepreneur, Gary Opadahl, my economic development director, is an entrepreneur, John Freisinger is an entrepreneur. I mean, we have all of these people that I've tried to surround myself with that really know what it looks like, not just the textbook version of entrepreneurship, but the actual physical, sometimes nauseating, sometimes encouraging, sometimes uplifting, sometimes beat you to death world of trying to start companies, creating jobs with ideas. And so we think we've got a pretty good finger on that pulse. And we're trying to make those investments, and we're starting to get a lot of national attention in Albuquerque, New Mexico for what we're doing here. We just, 2 or 3 weeks ago, our city council approved $2 million to go to a local accelerator here, ABQID, so that we can take local startup companies and run them through an accelerator, very much like you'd see Techstars or some of that kind of an application, where we can take companies that may have had a 20 to 30% chance of surviving into the next rounds and into the future, and up that to 6 or 7. People in our community, that was new for us. They thought, gosh, that's a lot of money. Well, yeah, it is a lot of money for the taxpayers to put up, but we think it's worth doing. We have been able to forge relationships with Living Cities. So we were picked as one of 5 cities in the United States by Living Cities. Living Cities is a group of a consortium of the 23 largest funders in the world. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Ford Foundation, Kresge, Carnegie, Kellogg Foundations. It is the rock star group of people that are trying to make investments in communities that make a difference. Albuquerque was recently selected, along with San Francisco, San Antonio, Seattle, and New Orleans, to be the 5 cohort cities to do that. We've been with Living Cities recently, and I don't want to talk out of school because other cities are doing great things, but let me just say that our talk was encouraging about how fast we're moving, how aggressive we're being. We're talking to everybody from the Department of Energy to the Department of Commerce and to private sector businesses and great companies like Intel and others about bringing centers of excellence to the city of Albuquerque. I had a meeting today surrounding a couple of issues that will be exciting for us to announce in the future on what we're doing. But we're trying to educate our children, our middle schoolers, our elementary schools, all the way up through the PhDs and the folks at Sandia Labs. And this is a great place to be an entrepreneur, number 1. Number 2, you can afford to do it here. Number 3, you're moving into a place that's not only full of, we're just chock full of intellectual capability, but we're also a $1 billion arts economy in our county alone. We're a place that's, of course, beautiful to live, but you can really succeed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I don't want to rant all night, although I could, about our city, but I just think that there's great opportunity. So my ask for you is just to give us a solid look, because I think when you do, you're going to find this as a place that really is in a renaissance, number 1, but also for entrepreneurship, we're going to lead the nation. And I know several mayors around the country that talk about, being the most entrepreneurial city in the country. I moved here with not 2 nickels to rub together. I went to school here. I borrowed a couple $1,000s from our parents. We started a business that ended up working in a 5-state region. My wife at one point was one of the 500 largest Hispanic-owned businesses in the country here. I enjoyed working with and for her in that enterprise. But I can tell you from personal experience, you can do it here. And for our investors, you will find you'll find an attitude here that I think surpasses many. There's a hunger here and there's an urgency here. So thanks for taking some of your time to come see what our great entrepreneurs in New Mexico have to offer. To our entrepreneurs, thanks for coming and making your world-class pitches. You're putting us on the stage. You're putting us at the forefront nationally on a lot of fronts. And when I meet these other mayors and then we talk about who's going to have the most entrepreneurial city in the country, I just tell them we're going to kick their ass. And I think we are in a lot of ways. So anyway, thanks for letting me come up and chew on you for a minute, and appreciate you being here, John. Thanks for the great Deal Stream Summit again, and we'll see you soon.